How do you derive to what it is that you believe in and what you stand for politically?
Okay.
So this is in relations to like polarization, us versus them, the oriental other, like identity and
so to be honest with you, I think that a fundamental... I can't remember if it was Jordan Peterson, who I don't want to quote.
He's not your best mate, is he?
He's not my best.
Yeah.
But he did say something interesting, and he was talking about, so I guess the biggest kind of fundamental split we're looking at is left and right wing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's a huge gradient linking one to the other, and I don't think it's my way of viewing it is people look at it as kind of like a line, right? You've got the left over here and the right over here, but really it should be a circle.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you start right wing at the top of the circle and you move clockwise, if you keep going further away from the right and you say you go all the way to the extreme left, essentially you're right wing again.
You're right wing again, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the same you saw in say, communist China. Where you say, oh well, look what the far left did. They were insane. It's like, well, they weren't. They were fascists. You know, they were like, they just, instead of Jews, they were rightists, capitalists. They just picked a different group. So the further around you go, you just come back to the same point, right? So they're kind of I think. But Jordan Peterson said something interesting, and he said, I think it was him, and he said they were looking at kind of, it was something to do with attitudes of conservative right-wing people in terms of their perspective on like disease, right? And about how they had a real revulsion. The people. Right-wing people generally like to have closed borders, right? And it was also, there was something to do with that and looking at statistics of political views for people who are like germaphobes and stuff like that, right? And it was something to do with like people who generally don't like the other. They want to keep other people out of their borders.
So OCD people.
Is there's some kind of relationship between that and the feelings of disgust and revulsion, and you know, to what extent that's true, I don't know, but I found it quite interesting. If you think about the metaphor of political versus physical borders, about me wanting to stay away from you because I don't like the fact that you're an immigrant, that you're dirty, that you're uneducated, that you're whatever, and I don't want and I want to keep this border of mine separate from you. And obviously, we're an island. Right, so we do have that island mentality in this country, and the generally kind of conservatives. I can generalize. Why not? Conservatives generally tend to be kind of make more money, kind of, you know, wealthier, middle class, upper middle class. Yeah, people tend to vote Tory.
Is that to protect their own self-interest?
I think, they're certainly much more classist, I would say, than Labour voters, who I think tend to be more the kind of the left wing. You know, if you want to talk about kind of our relationship with, say, socialism. Yeah. Socialism is about equality and general acceptance and trying to have safety nets for people to, you know...
Is in providing, like, free healthcare,
free education, you know. So, generally, we care about maintaining an equal standing for everybody to the best of our ability, whereas Tories tend to think that you should earn it through hard work and stuff. But obviously the game is rigged. We all know this. That you can't just a handful of people can work their way to the top.
Yeah.
But how many of them, like from nothing?
Yeah.
But are they representational of the reality of the world out there? No. Most people in positions of power got there because they had a leg up, because they came from wealthy backgrounds, they went to a good school. They knew someone who gave them a job.
The network was set up for
just
them.
the way.
Yeah.
I mean, just the statistics of people in power. How many of them went to Eton, Oxford, Cambridge? You know, it's not represent. You can't say that like we worked hard and therefore all our success is about how hard we worked. When statistically, how many people go to Eton?
Yeah.
In the UK, and how many of them are in politics? I mean, it's not. It doesn't make sense, right? So, you know, so I think the kind of my general idea of polarization is I think that the right wing generally are more polarized in the kind of the us versus them mentality, in that they want to protect their own interests against who they view as the others, the foreign. But then again, of course, then you have on the other extreme, you have the left wing who are polarized against the right, because they want to be inclusive, except for right wingers who they view as being the other. So they have the same problem, just maybe with a smaller group. But even in the UK, now it's looking at like 50-50, so it's not even a smaller group.
Yeah, it's fairly leveled out as compared to what is it in the States?
Oh, it's around 50-50 as well. I mean, you know, that's why you've got the swing states where kind of people. States rarely shift. There are states that are hard Republican and states that are hard Democrats, and then you've got a few in the middle that swing between the two, but they're 50-50. Yeah. Even in those states. So it's basically a 50-50 split right down for the whole country. Yeah. In this country, it's a lot. I think it's a lot more kind of fluid, but it's. Of course, there was still, you know, places like Yorkshire and stuff have always been very strong Labour, but that's because they're working class and were smashed by the Tories back in the 80s. And you know, but they're quite strong kind of unionists, and they always had that Labour slant. Yeah.
But is there a way of, because I know I watch a lot of debates nowadays online and in relations to like politics and various other things, and one thing which is a common theme is that you never seem to find anyone who changes their mind or their standpoint. Like everyone just seems to just argue their point. So whether it's left versus right, whatever versus whatever, it's always a case of who screams the loudest, but no one's really hearing each other out and trying to find a common ground, which is better for us all. Because I know as a human race at the moment, we're trying to. I think we've been in a good standpoint for many years. So we're trying to kind of level out loads of other things by setting rules and regulations and having conversations about how to solve certain human issues that have been going on. But when it comes to the debate in relations to politics, no one ever seems to shift. So is it because I was going back to Jordan Peterson again? He did mention in his book that our political ideologies comes from our temperament as well. So it tends to be, I don't know how right or wrong that is, but that's just one of his ideas, that it tends to be in relation to some of our temperaments, like agreeableness, like people on the left tend to be more agreeable, whilst people on the right tend to be less agreeable and so forth. And that has like an impact as to where we choose to stand politically, and that's one of the reasons why we tend to not.
So why is he attacking left wingers for being very disagreeable?
Well, we know how. We know how. Well, you can answer that while I yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't. You know, if you want to talk about that,
it's not necessarily. I don't. Well, he does seem to attack them quite a lot, but I think it's quite interesting that he sees on the standpoint that political views comes from a person's temperament, and I'm just trying to figure out why it's hard for people to shift or to agree on political ideologies.
Where does your temperament come from?
I don't know. I wouldn't have the answer to that.
Well, he's a psychologist. He should tell us.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, generally, your temperament, I think, just comes from it's a culmination of all your life experiences, your relationship with your family, your experiences at school. Yeah. Your, you know.
But then that comes back to your upbringing and what state you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think. I would like to say that people seem to be kind of more aligned with their parents politically than, but then again, that would negate the fact that there's a generational divide between voters. So like people in my parents' generation overwhelmingly voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
Not my parents, but whereas people in my generation,
protecting your parents.
So my parents are very left wing.
Okay.
Right? And I'm very left wing, and I would say
I'm very confused. Just to put out there, I'm like bang in the middle.
That's
right
okay.
now.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm not like a crazy leftist, but I certainly have kind of socialist left wing sympathies. And
what complete socialism is that? What you would vote for?
No, I mean, so it depends how you look at socialism. Like, because people say, well, you want to be like communist China
or Venezuela.
Venezuela. But I would say one. I'd say that's not really a socialist country. It's interesting. I think socialism for me is kind of like the Scandinavian model, right? So looking at places like Sweden and Norway, where and Finland, where the government has quite a lot of control over that. You have high taxation, but then
taxation of the rich, though.
Oh well, you have a cumulative tax, right? So the wealthy get taxed more than which we have here. But then at the same time, high taxation, but that money goes back into public services.
Yeah.
Right. So you say, well, why do you want to make money? Well, I want to make money because I want to be able to have a good quality of life. And if I get sick, I want to be able to be taken care of, right? That's why I want to make money. But what if you can't make money? Then should you have no healthcare? Should you not be able to have a good quality of life because, maybe you didn't have a good education or something? Why didn't you have a good education? Oh, I couldn't afford it. I had to go to a crappy state school. I couldn't go to a good school because of where I lived. Is that fair? No. So, and in places like Scandinavia, they put a lot of money into public services. They have free education up to university level, right? So even regardless of your financial background, I mean, you grew up in Sweden.
I know all of this. That's what I'm noting.
For the viewers, you have
blonde hair, blue eyes.
People have access to free education, free healthcare, good quality of housing, and as do the wealthy.
Yeah.
So like the point is like everybody wants to have a good quality of life, but the thing is if you make more money, if I tax you, you will still have access to all of those things.
Yeah.
You will still be able to go to a good school, or your kids will. Still, if you get sick, you'll have a very good health service to be able to take care of you. It's just now everybody can have that. I don't understand what's wrong with that.
Yeah.
So long as the money is allocated properly.
And the balance in Scandinavia is fairly decent because it is still quite capitalist in the sense that it's free market.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's heavily free market. I mean, so they do have a balance and they're doing something right to an extent, regardless of what you think about the state or the current political situation. But that's to do with something else. So it does work, but it's just how and why does that not get implemented? Is that just down to the people?
Well, there's lots of things. I mean, for example, they I think they have quite relatively high corporate tax.
Yeah.
Right? So companies get taxed. Amazon doesn't get taxed.
Yeah.
They're the richest country in the richest company in the world.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't pay any bloody tax. Right? And we don't tax them. Even if you increase their tax to by 0.5%, you could probably fund the NHS.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So oops. It's chaos.
Ignore me.
It's difficult. So the question is, the reason I think that we don't have high corporate tax here is just because, personally, I think it's to do with the interests of the elite. Yeah. Is that they just like American politics is, you can't run for president unless you have corporate sponsorship
backing,
right? And so these guys, like the Trump campaign, they're not funded by, well, maybe Trump could fund his own campaign, but your general right-wing Republican camp, and even Democrats, they're not funded by like a GoFundMe page, right? They're funded by oil companies and who will sponsor them on the premise that they will get tax reductions. And that's the same thing in the UK. The government, the current government their interests are aligned with Rupert Murdoch's, with Amazon's, which is why they don't increase corporate tax. Jeremy Corbyn says, I'll increase corporate tax by 0.5% or something, and now he's a He's a communist who, who's driving out businesses.
Yeah.
Right? And then you've got Brexit, where most of the businesses are already gone. So it's all just manipulation and nonsense.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a tricky situation because, whenever I look at countries like America and the UK, some of the things that bother me is like stuff like homelessness. Why is there still homelessness in countries like this that invest so much money heavily on aid externally to other countries when we have certain issues going on currently in our own countries that we're struggling with heavily?
But we're not struggling. We have, well, we are, but we have the money.
Yeah.
How much money goes? The Tory gave the DUP $1 billion pounds. Yeah. If they would support the Tories in Parliament, right? If you say that we're cutting education funds because we don't have money to support schools, and we're cutting money from the NHS because we can't afford to support schools, but you suddenly find £1 billion to fund the DUP, to give to the DUP for free if they back you politically, don't tell me you can't. You can't help the homeless because that's the
issue that I find with the state. That's the real big issue that I find with the state, because sometimes there is all these complaints about not finding funds to help those in need, but it's absolutely rubbish because the funds is there, but it's used externally for other stuff. Which
it's used for party privilege. It's like, will this help our government stay in control, or no, then we won't spend it. It's really as simple as that.
It's
party
ridiculous.
Politics.
Yeah, I mean, with that all said, like, do you think that as a people we're happier now? Because I told you I was one of the questions I was going to ask you, because at the moment, especially with social media and easy accessibility to news and people's opinions and so forth, you tend to seem to get the idea that everyone is unhappy or confused about life in general, and especially in relations to like politics, their own identity and purpose in life. And it begs the question that we're supposed to currently be living in the best times ever. Like right now, this minute, this is probably the best time there's ever been in terms of like health and cleanliness and possibly opportunity and so forth. But why is it that we feel like, or why is it that when you go online or you go into various social platforms, you feel like everyone is unhappy and constantly complaining? Like I have an idea. So my thought process was that maybe because the times have been so good in particular places, because obviously in other places we're discussing on the route here that they're not that good. Like if you go to Iraq or Syria, for instance, it's not the best time they've ever had. Like they've completely been annihilated and destroyed for whatever reason maybe. But looking at some of the Western countries right now, it is the best times this ever been. So why is it that people are still yet so unhappy?
Well, I think there's two things. One is I spilled some apple juice.
Apple juice, yeah. It happens.
One is as generally the trend seems to suggest that the higher the quality of life socially you have, the more anxiety and depression you have. And secondly, is a big problem now is social media and about personal curating. So the issue of for example, if you go to like Syria, how many of those guys kill themselves? Probably not many. Yeah. Right? They're desperate to try and stay alive. You have the highest suicide rates in places like Japan and in Norway, where you also have the highest quality of life in the world. The reason for that is, well, I mean, there are cultural issues in terms of Japan with kind of, I lived in Japan, so I'm aware of how society works somewhat. Social, kind of emotional repression. And in Norway, you've got no sunlight for like most of half the year. You're living in darkness, which can't help.
Drives them into depression. Yeah.
But generally, once your immediate needs are met, it's the human condition to always want more, to be unsatisfied. I think, which will lead us into the question of happiness in general. Yeah. But if you have food and you have a house and you have a home and a job, well, then it just comes down to, well, what does this all mean? All my basic needs have been met, if you don't have a job, you're frantically trying to get a job, right?
Yeah.
And then you get it, and you're very happy because you've got a job. And then you do your job for a while, maybe a year, and then the routine kicks in, and you figure out your job, and now you're like, well, is this it?
What's next now?
Am I gonna do this for the next 50 years and then die? Like, I don't want that, right? What about my other goals and aspirations, which you suddenly have because you have a job, which you weren't thinking about before you had a job, right? And so it's just a question of, once you've got everything, your brain will always think, what next? Because, you know, it's natural to want to push, to, and of course, one of the reasons that you push is because you look around you and you see your neighbors, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, which is where social media comes into play, because now, it's not enough. Like, if you didn't have social media, like me, my point of reference for how well are people doing in life would be to look out my window. And I go,
Now you're checking social media. What
I go, Lewisham. I'm doing okay. You know. But then I go on. I log into Facebook, which is how I interact with the world. I'm lonely. I'm very lonely. And
you need more friends, dog.
I really do. You log into Facebook, and my friends are like, I just got back from skiing in Geneva. Or having a great time hiking on this volcano in Hawaii.
Hashtag wish you were here.
Hashtag, you know, Doug is a loser. And you're like, oh man, like my life sucks. And of course my life doesn't suck, but it does compared to someone who's hiking in Hawaii.
And only showing you that momentary happiness.
I don't know, like maybe the person who's hiking in Hawaii is going through a divorce, or his family member just died, but you don't get that, right? Because they choose not to show you all the crap that's going on.
100%
in their life. They show you the best part, and I'm guilty of that. Like I don't bitch and moan on Facebook about.
Are you smug on Facebook though?
Occasionally,
talking about all your fancy holidays, like
well, I'll upload a few pictures. But I'm not, and mainly because one, you know, I think it's partly because you don't want to burden people with your, at least some of us don't want to burden the world with our crap. You know, if I need to vent, I'll go out for a beer with a friend of mine. And I'll drink. I'll go, you know, I hate my life. You know, I'll do it properly. I won't just sit there typing away.
A whole bunch of strangers that don't really care about you. It's interesting you said that, because I remember I was reading the stats on what the biggest reasons for divorce in 2019, and it was down to dissatisfaction. So a lot of
thanks for telling me that, like a month before I get married.
My bad. You're gonna stay happy for long, forever and ever.
Thank you. That's what I want to hear.
This is not in relations to you, but obviously those people out there that are just dissatisfied.
Sure.
But apparently
the other 50%,
the other 50%, which you're not involved in. But it was quite astonishing to find out that the biggest reason for divorce in 2019 is going to be dissatisfaction, and a lot of that
dissatisfaction in what?
In their own lives in comparison to others. So it's relative. So a lot of that was some of the solicitors were saying was a lot of their arguments was down to like some of their partners watching other people's relationships on social media and then comparing it to their own lives. But then they're only watching this momentary bit of happiness on social media where a couple are absolutely loved up and putting all these lovey-dovey and beautiful quotes about life. Then you're turning around and looking at your partner thinking, what are we doing? Why are we not doing exactly what these two fake models are doing?
And you're both sitting there in your pajamas with your wee pot belly, your greasy hair, eating noodles, just like
completely like dissatisfied with your life, and it's quite atrocious and sad to find out that that's one of the major reasons.
But that's been going on since, like, you know, film.
Well, but then it wasn't at this scale though, because I mean, before
but we
keeping up with the Joneses, you're looking at your neighbor, but now you grab your phone and there's like a million people living their best life right in front of your face. So
I hate that, living my best life.
I'll never use it in a serious context ever.
That expression makes me want to kill whoever says that. I'm living my best. I think, well, we've always had, like, because Hollywood and even Disney films give us unrealistic expectations of what love is about. And we think that love is this kind of, you know, I don't look at my partner and I don't feel my heart pounding anymore because, of course you don't. You know, because you've been with them for 5-6 years. Like, if your heart pounded, you should go to the hospital if you're still pounding after 5 years. But you have other things, right? You have companionship, you have goals, you have
common purpose.
You have common purpose. You have partnership. You have I don't know, shared responsibility. You've got a kid. You're bringing up a child together. There are things that are bigger than your heart pounding.
Yeah.
And it's normal that relationships change over time.
Yeah.
People change over time. So you can't expect to feel the same way
all the time
that you felt in the honeymoon, the initial stages of your relationship after a few years. It's just.
I think that's the selfish nature of the human being, always wanting to like just be pleased, and it's all about us and it's not about the common goal or others or the purpose we have as a family to raise and uphold our children and so forth. So it's always about, I don't feel a certain type of way which I felt the first 2 months I met you, so that must mean that there's something wrong with the situation, not that we're developing and we're growing towards something else as a couple.
But like it's quite common, so this is why people have these midlife crises, right? So a midlife crisis is basically you wake up one day and you're 50, 60, whatever, how old you are when you have a midlife crisis, 50. And you suddenly think, you turn to your wife and she's 50 as well, and you go, what am I doing with this old bag? I should be driving a sports car and dating a 20-year-old. And then they have this kind of breakdown. And the thing is, it's because they don't accept that they're getting older. The time has moved on, and they should appreciate other things in life.
Yeah, most definitely.
And relationships are like that, where you and your partner, when you're both 50, you're not going to look your best anymore.
Yeah.
But so what?
Well, some of us do have great genes.
The lucky few. I'm not one of them. But
you look 20.
Well, maybe if I shaved, I'd look about 15. But it's a question of appreciating the changes. And the thing is that Julie and I, like my fiance and I, we are strong. I would say that we're stronger now as a couple than we ever have been.
Yeah.
And we've been through some very rough times. We broke up a few times here and there. I mean, obviously, the way we look at each other now is not the same as when we first started dating. Yeah. But we're very. She's my best friend. We're very comfortable with one another. We love each other very much. We want what's best for each other, and we will sacrifice our own desires, our own kind of maybe our, I want to do this now. Well, maybe you can't because it would upset her.
Who does the most sacrificing though?
Well, in different ways. It's 50-50. But I mean, as we mature, as we grow older, not that old, 35, but as we grow together, we're becoming stronger, and I think that but it takes sacrifice and it takes talking. You have to figure out what it is you want, how you're going to get there together. Are you going to sacrifice now, and I'll sacrifice in a year's time? But it's a partnership. It's like when you're in a business, you have to talk to your colleagues. You have to figure out the best plan to move ahead and get your next goal. It's like that,
very much so.
No,
it's amazing because I mean the best example I've had of a relationship in terms of like me watching a relationship firsthand has been my parents. So with them, I think what keeps them together is having that common goal and purpose. So they're both people of the color, priest, as you say, and their main focus is marriages. So like marriage counseling, like talking about marriages and officiating marriages and stuff. And having that common purpose, it keeps them. It keeps them aligned in being best friends forever because they work together and they both enjoy what they do, and they both have this common idea of seeing people getting into relationships and then transitioning into marriage and then mentoring them and counseling them throughout the marriage when they're going through troubles and so forth, and just keeping the marriage strong. So that common goal is what keeps them going. I don't know where they'll be if they didn't have that common goal, because they can be quite different in terms of like their characteristics and their behaviors as well. But then having that thing that they always go back to is what's maintain the strength of their relationship for such a long period, because they both absolutely love what they do. So that common purpose is like a major part of why their relationship is as strong as it is.